Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 253, I believe. I think it's 253. And so if you read the thumbnail and everything, you may have thought we had two guests. One, unfortunately, had something come up last minute. But we've got the other one. We've got David with us. Scott O'Green kind of had to bail last minute. A little family emergency, but David and Scott have an art collective, I'd Rather Be Drawing, and David's got a brand new Kickstarter. We're going to get to that in a minute, but first we'll kind of do what we always do and introduce ourselves. Hopefully you know me, you're on my channel. If you are new to this, this is the Artcasters. We do this pretty much every week. It rotates back and forth from Josh's channel and my channel. Josh, my guest, we'll get to in a minute, or my co-host that we'll get to in a minute. But anyway, as far as, I don't have anything major to promote other than just on my YouTube channel. I've got my series, Making Comics 101, which takes you step by step how to make comics. Basically, it's like 69 episodes long. Any topic you can think of on how to make comics. Actually, it's more episodes now because I've done a couple live episodes. I think next week I'll have another live episode. So definitely check that out if you want to learn how to make comics. What about you, Josh?
All right. Thank you, co-hostess with the mostest. So you can check out my stuff at quarterlystories.com. Go there for a sneak preview of my graphic novel about faith and mental illness. It's like an autobio indie comic. Soon to come out through Marcosia. It's the release date's the 14th, but I don't have any pre-order information yet. But I'll get that to you guys when I do, and then I'll probably be bugging all of you guys, including our guests, to hawk my wares and stuff. So, but other than that, you can just check out joshuakemble.com for illustrations, and then if you're bored and you want to check out like a weird indie album, check out The Bottle of Better Than on all music streaming platforms. So that's pretty much my stuff.
Awesome. All right, so let's get to our guests. We got David Fleming. Now, David's got a Kickstarter. We want you to talk about the Kickstarter in a minute. There's a link. These links aren't clickable on here anyway, but if you just search Analog Missions Obrion on Kickstarter, you'll find it. There is also a clickable link in the description of this video. So just go to the description, you can click on that and go to it. But you should be able to find it if you just do a search on Kickstarter as well. So David, how you doing?
Oh yeah, I'm doing great, guys. It's late. I'm drinking coffee. I'm staying up. Gonna just slide through work tomorrow. Actually, we were just talking about this. Actually, I'm a high school art teacher. I actually have a student teacher, and she's teaching both classes tomorrow. So like, I am just gonna be chilling once I get tomorrow. So we're up till the cows move for me over in Missouri. So awesome.
Well, I was just saying, we always appreciate people in the Midwest and the East Coast that come on the show, because we do it so late. It's hard for them. So even sometimes we get international people that are like wake up crazy early or stay up crazy late. So every once in a while, I always feel bad about even asking people, so I don't. But maybe I should.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's not like every single night I'm staying up until forever. Yeah, it's a cool thing to be able to jump on and have the opportunity. So.
All right, so this Kickstarter you got is actually the follow-up to, and you'll be able to get, if you don't have the first one, you can get that with the tier. I've already got the first one, so explain a little bit about what you got going on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, so like you said, it's called Analog Missions Oberon. So it is the second book in a series called Analog Missions, and that part of the series, that arc, is 3 books. So this is the second book in a 3-book arc. It is a 50-page soft cover too, and that's like an important part of sort of like my whole pitch of the thing is I like to wait. I love comics. I love like the media. I love what it can do. I love what indie comics can do, especially like because it's that format of like just having to be a floppy and having to be 20 pages is something that even when I collected them, I was always almost like a little bit bothered by sometimes, because you read them, you put them back in the bag on board, and then you put them in your long box, and then like it doesn't sit on the shelf. It's not this like piece. And so I wanted to find a way to change that. And I have this love of not just comics, but of manga and of anime and a whole long stream of things. And actually, I was just on with Peter not more than a couple hours ago here in the chat. And
I saw Peter in the chat.
Yeah, I was talking about that like whole history, and it's a long thing of just like all the interest in things that my dad used to get me into when I was just like a little kid, and he was like a sci-fi nerd, and we were like watching Tank Girl and reading all kinds of old comics and stuff that I probably shouldn't even have been. And then when I got to the age where it was like I realized my taste in things and I was like, I want to make something that somehow grabs both of these things, and it has that manga feel and that style. So the book itself, actually, I have the first book here. It is printed, and it's the shape and size of like a manga. And it actually, like, it's bound, and it's just like, it was an important thing for me when I finally was ready to like make and publish a book, that it was a book, and it would come out and like you'd be able to hold that thing in your hands. And so this is what issue 1 looks like, and then issue 2 is going to be another 50 pages. And it's a sci-fi. It's hard to describe it in terms of like the thing, because I write in like themes of like ideas and stories and stuff like that, and then I bring them all together into an arc. And so that kind of thing, without spoiling a lot of just the cool stuff that happens in it, is just like, if you love that look, that feel, that sci-fi vibe, like you're gonna love it. And
that's awesome. So correct me if I'm wrong, but was that your first comic, the one you just showed up?
First one that I published.
Okay.
I toyed with for a long time, like small stories, short stories. I self 100% like printed it, saddle stitched a book called A Boy and His Bike.
Okay.
A year before I released this one, I only made 50 copies and just kind of brought them to the local convention, and I sold out of them. And it was kind of a part of the whole, like, oh, maybe I make things that people like. Like, I need to sit back down and go back to the drawing board and really think of like that thing that I want to put all the effort into and really like publish and like get that thing out there.
That's really good, because I honestly, and I think part of it is because I sell, when I was doing conventions, I was selling so many different things that there wasn't a focus on just the comic, but I never sold 50 comics at a comic convention.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I went there just being like, this would be cool if someone reads it. And then it was like, I was on the morning of the last day. So it's called Planet Comic Con. It's like our big Missouri convention. Yeah. And it was like the Sunday, and I sold my last copy, and I remember like writing the little sold out sign and being like, well, that was not what I was expecting to happen with that.
That's really impressive. Honest. I think if you talk to a bunch of people that their first time, I don't know if it was your first time conventioning, but your first time with the book, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it was my third time at the convention, but it was my first time really finally getting. I started the convention scene more just doing like prints and illustrations and stuff, and it's still what I do sort of in between the comic work. But yeah, it was a thing where I'd always meant to get into that scene for comics. But as you guys know, who have all made comics, it's a huge like thing. You don't just sit down and in a week and in the end have a story. I mean, it takes time, it takes planning, and it takes all kinds of stuff. And it just took me a long time to figure out my flow, I guess is a good way of putting it. And then when I finally did, it was like, okay, I know what it looks like and it feels like to make the book now.
Yeah, and it's always good when you get like an awesome book, and then there's that follow up. And I've done 4 books now, but I really should be way further along. So it's cool. It's cool because some people, they'll put one out, and then sometimes it's hard to follow up. But sometimes, and it just goes. It's either way, because sometimes it's you're the fact of you've created one thing, so you can do it, so you can do more. But you never. It's always funny that sometimes. There's really no follow-up, so it's awesome that you're back with another one. So what was the time frame in between the first one? I'm trying to remember, because it was
March of last year when that.
Okay, so that's really good, because you said it's like around a 50-page book.
Yeah,
right?
It's like 44 of the story, and then the extra couple pages in between of all that other stuff.
For an independent comic, I think that's pretty good. Yeah. It's definitely better than my output.
Yeah, that's a good output.
Yeah, and part of that is like I thought about all this too with like format and stuff, and drawing in the sort of manga size, you can't fit a ton of panels per page. So there's an economy of like exactly what I need to make happen per page and pacing and stuff. And I think it helps because it is like I've learned to pace with like at the most you want like maybe 4 verticals on a page size like that. If you get much more, you end up squeezing and things get weird and stuff. So it ends up, I think it helps a lot too, like not as an excuse, but like I can't just fit 1,000 panels on a page. So I have to like push them out and pace it more. And it helps get the pages out quicker because of that.
Yeah. Do you actually work at scale, or do you work like a little larger? Like
I work actually so I work full on so this is 11 by.
Oh, so
I'm actually working on
traditional.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you work traditional or digital. That's pretty cool.
Tactile inking is super important for me. I have a Surface Pro and I do the digital work and stuff, but I have not been able to just. It's so weird. I've tried to ink things digitally, and I didn't hate what it looked like. I just kind of like hate what it felt like. Like I was done with it, and it wasn't satisfying for me.
Yeah, I just have a battle with myself over that because I love the feel of traditional inking, and I was pretty much everything had to be traditionally inked, and I would tell you that just watching people that digitally ink, because you see them and they make their brush stroke and it's like, oh, they didn't get it right, and they keep redoing it. I'm like, well, when I do traditional, I don't have to redo that. I mean, I get it down perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a lot of stuff digitally now, and I don't know if you've ever used Clip Studio Paint, but
yeah, actually I have. I've toyed with it a little bit before I decided. So as a teacher, you can get a really good deal on Photoshop. So eventually I kind of gave into that.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I'm kind of, at least for expediency, I'm really liking the inking with that G pen and everything in Clip Studio. But then I have to ask myself, because when hopefully I'm going to start back on Young and the Dead early next year, and then I definitely know I'm gonna pencil it digitally. But then, even though I think I could get done maybe quicker digitally inking, I think I'm probably, because I want it to be consistent. I want it to look like it looked before, and I don't know if I'll be able to get that with digital if it's going to be just too precise or whatever. But
yeah, that's I think a part of it too. There's a part of me that loves like old heavy metal, and that kind of like that style of animation where almost like sometimes the colors jump out the lines a little bit and things like aren't perfect. I think I like a little bit of that aesthetic, and I think that's part of the hand inking too. Like you slip sometimes and you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna work with it. Like let's see what we can do with that. And there isn't that Control Z to constantly making it perfect.
Yeah, for me, it's like it's a speed thing too, where it's like I'm actually fairly quick inking, but it's definitely a tactile thing too, where it's like I just don't feel right finishing a page if my hands aren't all like covered in ink. And the other thing is just like for that kind of indie look, like it's like I tend to like even like hand letter and stuff, just because I'm like I like that tactile look. However, the pitch that I just worked on, like it was like a development for like 5 pages that we're pitching around, and like that, just thinking about the quantity of pages and stuff like that, I opted to go like digital. But it's weird because it's like when I do digital, it feels more like work because that's what I do all day. So it's like when I'm able to do like traditional and like really get into it and build lettering, like. So anyhow, point being, I'm with you, David, on that.
Yeah, but I love the like what you can do. And Scott, you even like made the comment of like you had this idea of like maybe just doing the pencils digitally, but printing that and then like inking. Like, it's kind of what I love about digital right now. Like I feel like when digital was first a thing, like first it had like a real big stigma, and it was kind of like, oh, you cheat, like kind of thing, and then it was accepted, and then everyone was like, so you're this or you're that, but it's not even that anymore. Like there's such a combination of like, there's an artist that I follow, and I wish I could pull his name out of my brain, but he does a thing where he inks everything like on digitally, but then he prints it off and then he like Copic colors it by hand. And then he'll like scan it back in and kind of clean it. It's just like this cool thing of like seeing his process and seeing people who like find a way to mesh the two of them.
And
I definitely don't hate one or love the one. It's just like my process needs to exist in this space.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually think that's important to mention because I always feel like people like I'm a traditionalist at heart. Like I like a lot of the traditional stuff, but I use like different workarounds and stuff and definitely work in digital. Like it's funny, the comic I hand letter and hand ink. I'm like even doing my thumbnails digitally because it's just quicker.
Yeah.
And what I've found is like it's also less irritating than having to find like space in my sketchbook. It's like, no, I can just make a new page and it's not a problem. I don't have to like format it or anything. I can keep the same format size and stuff. But I also find it's just so weird when people get like really like sticklers about kind of working traditionally and kind of judge people who are working non-traditionally because usually their process at some point has nothing traditional about it. I mean, even inking is like an iteration. So like if they want to get really legit traditional, are they like going out and finding like a bird and like pulling out their feather, like waiting for a feather that they can find, and then like, you know, cutting it, but not with an X-Acto knife because that's modern, right? So you have to cut it traditionally. Like it's like one of those arguments that I don't think can have legs when people try to make it like of traditional, you know, medium. Even like oil painters get really snobby about like, well, this is an oil. And it's like, it's always funny to me because it's like the modern oil paints you're buying at like the art store are not like the same thing like the masters were painting with. And you should be thankful they aren't, because you'd have to
right.
Or hire an assistant to do it, you know? So
you don't want actual cadmium in your paint.
Yeah, totally. Right. Like, I mean, yeah, you might end up getting like one of the weird, crazy diseases, you know, that a lot of the original painters got, you know, from painting. So, and
then you get people like Pepper, who's in the 100 Days of Making Comics, who makes his own paints.
And then Pepper is one of the guys who could like legit like roll with that argument of like, no, we're gonna go all traditional.
I love watching people who do that, make their own watercolors and paints and all that stuff with like smashing up pigments. Like I that's super cool. But it's that thing too of like, it's got to fit the aesthetic, and it definitely fits Pepper's.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so so like you traditionally make it kind of close to scale, but it's I'd say like a little larger. I mean, definitely larger.
Yeah, it's probably about twice. I think I shrink at like 52% or something. It's like an exact amount, but yeah, it's pretty much double.
That's cool.
Do you use like pre-ruled manga pages, or do you rule your own pages, or?
Yeah, I cut them from whatever. I think it's the 300 series Bristol.
Yeah,
because I really like smooth. Like I don't like any of the texture at all. It's like a weird thing that I've grown accustomed to.
Really? Yeah. See, I was kind of the opposite. I kind of always like the cold press a little more than the hot press. But then lately I've been using it's just like the hammer mill cardstock. I think Jake Parker recommended it. I started using that. It's not as thick as like a Bristol.
Yeah.
But it's a lot smoother. But it's nice, and it's you know, it's cheaper, and you get a lot. I mean, you buy a big pack of it for next to nothing.
Yeah,
but
I do all my like sketchy thumbnail on is like hammer mail paper, because when Josh was just talking about that, I was like, man, I should start thumbnailing digitally. I just have like a stack of hammer mill loose leaf like over in the corner over there of just nasty rough thumbnail sketches that I just don't want to throw away, but I don't really know what to do with.
Yeah, I still do my thumbnails traditionally, even if I work digitally. I don't know why that. I wonder why that is. I think for that kind of stuff, I think I could go faster. Maybe because with digital, you have a tendency to want to zoom in, and that can be bad if you're trying to do really rough sketches. But it's really. Oh, go ahead.
Like I didn't even like roughing. Like I've done pencils digitally before, right? But I just started noticing that if I just use like the default pencil in Photoshop, where it's like really ugly and it's just like it's not a really useful tool, but that actually works pretty well for thumbnailing, because it's like you just can't like get in there and noodle with it.
You were making me think.
I just limit. Yeah,
I was just thinking you are making me think even like getting a brush, making it big. Adding a gray tone and not even really worrying about the lines, but just blocking out like compositionally like the space too. Like I was like, that would be way easier for my brain, because like I look at my thumbnails sometimes, and if I don't look at them quick enough, I'm like, oh man, what was I doing here? Like
totally. I've had that. It's funny. I've always joked with other illustrators and stuff that like the thumbnails I show clients are not my thumbnails. You know what I mean? Like my thumbnails for them are like rough, like pretty worked out, kind of tight pencils at that point. And but like, you know, and then like storyboards, same thing. They're like loose, but they're still like tighter pencils than like my thumbnails, man. Like you can't make head or tail of them. So half the time. So I'm trying to spend more time on them though now, because I've realized like it can cut out a lot of the work. That's the theory, but we'll see. I mean, Scott was kind of teasing me a little bit ago about like they were getting a little detailed, and I'm like, yeah.
Sometimes pretty, but I can see it kind of your pitching with your thumbnails. It's a different story. But and also of course when you're drawing that loose, there's always so much emotion and fluidness, or however you want to describe it, in those thumbnails.
Yeah.
And I know people that just take those and blow them up and then go over them, and it's that weird thing that the more detail you add to it, the stiffer it gets, and it's you lose so much. I think it's more because I think your eyes fill in a lot of the missing, filling in the blanks, and when you have to actually physically do that, then it looks a little stiffer. But
yeah, man, if there were a way to kind of loosen up the artwork and kind of retain that freshness, but still have that like perfect detail, I think we'd all be happy. But I don't know if there is.
Some people just have that really, that really rough kind of messy style, like somebody like a Scotty Young, or where it's just super loose, and it has so much character to it. So but there's different styles. But but then there's also a lot of the people that I like. They are very technical looking, and I like all kinds of artwork for different reasons. So
right, like Chad Moore is on the opposite scale, just like insanely beautiful, precise lines.
Right.
I do love that.
So I did want to kind of talk. I mean, originally we were going to talk a little bit about I'd Rather Be Drawing, and how and like I said, Scott couldn't make it, but how you guys kind of got together and the impetus behind that. So I don't know if you want to kind of go back, and so you guys were kind of working a day job at the time, and I'll let you guys tell the story. But from what I understand, you guys just found that you both had a love for art and comics, and you decided to kind of create this art collective, and then because of that, you guys started doing the 100 Days of Making Comics, and that's how obviously we became aware of you and everything. But I don't know if you want to tell a little more about that, because I think having, whether you're doing it for like having an accountability partner or whatever, I think that's something that's really helpful, and it's something probably more people should do. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about that, David?
Yeah, so it's funny actually. The meeting of Scott was like a really weird thing, because I was in Missouri, about to go off to like do all my college stuff. My wife actually worked with him first at a movie store, and then we went off and did our thing, and I came back to work at Hobby. So I worked at Hobby Lobby pretty much like through high school, getting me through college. Then I went off to college and came back, started working there again. And then he was working there at my Hobby Lobby. So there's like this weird thing where like we had known him just kind of barely working with my wife. And then I came back and like saw him. And I was like, is that you, Scott? Like, it's like this weird, like, okay, this is like, it feel like a weird, when it was meant to be like, how do we reconnect like this? And now you're literally at my job. And so we'd always known that we were like nerds together and loved the comics thing. So we ended up forming what we used to call the Monday Night Losers. And it was us meeting and trading off at different houses. And it was actually about 4 or 5 of us. And we used to just literally sit at the dinner table, until we got tired, and just draw and just kind of do whatever we were doing. And at that point, there was no structure to it. I don't even know if we were really making comics or if we were just drawing and just doing our thing. But it was just like that one by one, people started to fall off until it was just me and Scott. and we always used to see each other at work, and it was like, it's like a literal joke is that we would pass each other on like just a bad day or something, and we would just be like, man, I'd rather be drawing right now. Like, it was like literally we used to say to each other like at work, like what are we doing here? Like, I would so rather be drawing. And then when we so it was like, I think it was 2016, I had finally like really like taking it seriously. Like I was like, I made the Instagram like a public, and it wasn't private anymore. And I was like trying to put myself out there and show the world my art and stuff. And a friend of ours who's been doing it for way longer was like, you should table at the convention that we do. And then we were like iffy that we could do it alone. Mm-hmm. So we went in together on a table. And when they asked, it was like, we were signing up for it together at our like, drawing night. And we were like, well, whose name goes on it? And then it happened like super organically. They were like, I'd rather be drawing's name goes on it. Like, not my name, it's not your name. And then like that was literally, that's sort of how that sort of thing formed. And then just very organically through just like we did it. It was like, I don't know if you guys can remember back, because I feel like you guys have been doing this way longer than me. Like I've probably only really been hitting the scene and doing this and taking this as more of like my side hustle career for maybe 5 years now. But it was like that first sale at a con is like, you're just like, the person walks away with your art in your hands. You're like, that guy bought my art. Like he found out of this whole crowd, he saw like what I drew, and he like that just happened, right? And it was like that was the spark. That was like all I really needed was that cool feeling of like I made a thing and someone cared about it enough. And then we just kept meeting, and then it evolved into that like, okay, well now we have this name. Like, what do we do with this name? Like, let's make this an official thing. Like, let's put ourselves out there as I'd rather be drawing. And it never really, I guess it really never changed from just straight up accountability, having a partner who's just at that same level as you, like working through the thing. And then the learn by doing kind of evolved out of that. Like that became the next years when we started our website and like put that out there. And it was one of those another funny things where it was like, put your slogan here. And we were like, what's our slogan? And then we were like, well, like, man, we're just trying to do this thing and learn as we go.
And that's the one thing. If anyone's watched my Making Comics 101, the one thing I always say is, if you want to learn how to make comics by making comics. I mean, that's the best way to learn. And so many people get stuck on this idea that they have to be at this level or an artist before they can start their comic or whatever, and that's nonsense. I mean, that you're gonna learn way more by actually making something than you are trying to do it in the background and not putting something out there or whatever. Because I mean, I love that.
Yeah, and fear of like because I think we've all experienced that, like before having made a comic, like there's, especially if you like grew up loving comics and stuff like that, there's like a reverence to it, and it's almost like a fear of getting it wrong that I think prevents people from really doing it. At least for me, it totally did. Like there was an era where I didn't care, and I just make these little like photocopied things and sell them in high school and stuff. But when I got serious about it, it was like there's a legitimate like fear of like I'm not ready. And and when I kind of realized like it's just it's like anything in life, like like your first time like having a mentor as a high school teacher, right? Like and be mentored by, I forget what the program's called, but it's like when you have to have like a teacher kind of supervise what you're doing, but and they coach you on it and stuff. Like that's frightening, and like you don't know what you're doing at first, and the first time you're on your own like teaching, you don't know what you're doing. Like first time you're anywhere, like the first time you're at a cash register, the first time you're doing anything in life, it's like it tends to be a fearful thing. But the weird thing is, if you let that kind of prevent you from doing it, you'll kind of wake up like the next day being like not a cartoonist, and like the next day not being a cartoonist. And so I think it's really cool when people actually make that step to like legitimately become a cartoonist. And like there's one step to it, which is make comics. And if you're not making comics, don't call yourself a cartoonist unless maybe you're an animator. Then you call yourself but the second you get into that ring and you're actually making content, like good or bad, like welcome to the club. So I think that's cool. And I like that you mentioned the first sale, because that really is one of those moments of like realizing like, wait, I just make something and I can like sell it. And then you start like dissecting things at the store, like in your head, you're like, wait a minute, like, so I've made that product, like, oh, okay, so now I know how that's made. Like, that's not just like they press a button and it's all, manufactured. It's like there's actually a person who like folds this and like laminates it, and you know what I mean? You start kind of figuring, oh, like, well, if they can make it, why can't I? It's really, I think it's a liberating experience. So that's cool.
The if they can make it, so can I has like actually kind of been me my whole life. Like I am the kid who took it all apart to try to figure out why it works. Like I'm the guy who fixes all of our cars, and when the fridge breaks, it's already in pieces, and I'm trying to find out how to fix it and why it broke. And like I love how things work, and I think that's a part of like my creative thing too. Is like how does a comic get made? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out, because if they make it, like I can make it. Like let's do this thing. I've always had that really intrigued personality of like wanting to pull it apart and figure it out. And
you were talking about how long you've been doing it or whatever, but honestly that feeling doesn't really go away. I mean, it's like it doesn't, like, I mean, if it's comics or whatever, I've sold comics and things, but then now I'm going into like a new thing where I'm making these coloring books and putting it up on Amazon. And at first, it takes a while to build that up. So at first I'm putting these things out, putting a lot of time in these things, putting them out there, and they're not really selling. And then all of a sudden, you start getting sales on them, people start finding them, and it's like, wow, and then it starts to pick up. So also a lot of times it's just sticking to something, because usually nothing happens right away. But if you give up too soon, then you're kind of missing out. Plus, I think with comics, I think it's also more, you've got to love it too, whether other people do or not. But it does help when other people do like it. So.
Actually, that's the huge part of it for me was, so what Josh was saying, I was definitely in that place when I first started this, of like feeling like I want to make a comic, but my art's not good enough yet. Like I want to do this thing, but I'm not quite there yet. Like let me keep trying this thing until I get there. And I think a big part of it too is this feeling of like that you have this cool story, and what if I make it and it's dumb with my cool story, and then I have to make a different thing, and what if that was my only good idea? And like you get stuck in that loop. And I'm like that person who's like if this Kickstarter isn't fun, I'm still making this book. Like this is a thing. Like this is a story idea. I can't move forward until I finish drawing this and making this. Like it's gonna get made regardless, and I'm gonna move on to the next one. And so it is like that, having that attitude and that passion, I feel like is part of also what attracts sales and people to care about your work. Is it just you can tell, like when you meet a passionate artist or a creator, it's like when I'm at a con and I meet another guy who like shares it, I'm like, dude, I can like, before I even look at the book, I can just like tell from the personality of most creators that like whatever this is, you put your heart into it, I'm down. Like I'm here to support it.
Yeah. We could say something.
Go.
Oh, I was just gonna. When you were talking about the, when you guys started doing I'd rather be drawing and meeting and doing all that stuff. It's just like I remember, because I was doing something like that. I helped start this thing. Just here, and this was a while back, and obviously right now we're in different times where you can't really do this anymore. But I was just at the point where I had wanted to start. I was going to start like reaching out to other artists like locally and try to start getting something going, and then everything went down. But so hopefully still, I can still do that once things, once we're in a better place and everything. But it was kind of similar where I helped start this thing called West Side Creatives, because I live in Arizona, and there's kind of the Phoenix metropolitan area. In the East Coast, you've got like Tempe and Mesa and Scottsdale, and then Central Phoenix is kind of the big hub. But usually it's either East Side or West Side are where most of at least the creative businesses are and things like that. And there wasn't much on the West Side where I live. So but I knew a bunch of other artists out here, and so we kind of got together and we started meeting and everything, and it was really cool. We would meet every just over coffee and stuff, and sometimes we create stuff, sometimes a lot of times it was just talking shop about bad clients and stuff like that, or whatever, that type of thing. But man, I kind of missed that. So I'm hoping we can get back to that at some point. But it doesn't have to. I mean, right now it doesn't have to be actually physically meeting in person. I mean, Josh and I do this, Artcasters every week, and we also do the 24-hour art check over on Josh and Corey's channel. Mm-hmm. But and we continue to do. I mean, we're on what, like 200? There has been some kind of changes as far as personnel, but I'm trying to think how many. Do you remember what episode you joined us at, Josh?
Oh, I don't know. I think it was before 100.
Okay. Well, so it's so you've lasted longer than I would say. Probably Jeff and Kevin were on. You've probably been as long as they were on, I'm guessing. I could be wrong. Yeah.
And what's
when they kind of.
Yeah, what's cool about it too is like what you're describing is like how I met Kevin. That's how I met. Like we've had Chris Caligula on here before, and he was kind of my buddy in art school who would do that. And then when I lived in Long Beach, because we were kind of neighbors, like he would come over. We'd do like all night art sessions, just working on stuff together and spitballing ideas. I think like having communities of artists, like the NCS, like this thing, like the Artcasters, like. What you kind of build around you is also like your fuel, because like the dark side of cartooning is it's not always easy, and it can be disheartening when you're like trudging through and you feel like I'm not making the progress I need to make, or like you're hitting a wall like at some point. And it's really helpful to have like somebody who's in the same fight, so they can be like, have you tried this approach? Or you can spitball ideas, or like you can also like help promote each other and like help kind of grow each other. And like, I think that's like really fundamental for like artistic growth, and also just for like for sanity, because it's like it's pretty like time consuming, just kind of lonely process where you're pretty much, it's you and a piece of paper or computer screen for a really long period of time. So having like that collaboration is really good. I think that's cool.
Art is kind of created in a bit of a void, but the creative process, I think the fuel for artists is not the void. And I was actually talking to Peter about this a little bit earlier, of like, when the pandemic did hit, I kind of lost my energy. I was stuck at home, and you'd think that'd be the perfect thing for it, like being home all day and just having time on my hands. But I like completely kind of almost got myself cut off from like the usual people and artists that I would like experience and spitball with and get stoked, and just it was like I'd missed the inputting part of being an artist and couldn't output because of it. Yeah, it's like it's a weird thing with the people who don't make art and who think like you just go to your basement and you draw for a month and then a comic appears, but it's like it's all the other things that you experience along the way, and the shows you watch, and the movies, and the books, and the creators around you and stuff that like fuels even like getting that energy and starting to make from it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a balance, right? Because I like on the same note, I just want to bring up like the devil's advocate of that, because I agree with that. But I've also met people who do the drink and draws, like the meetups, like everything, all the art challenges online, and have never completed a comic, but they say they want to do comics. You know what I mean? So it's like there's like a fine balance of like, sometimes it's good to actually like sit down and hit the canvas or hit the drawing board, right? Like it's not all socializing. But if all you're doing is hitting the canvas and the drawing board, you got to question why you're even doing it at that point, you know? Because I mean, you're trying to create human interaction through your stories. You definitely need some human interaction for yourself. Right? Like I always like, I envy Chris Ware and his output and stuff, but I don't know if I envy his life, because it's like I don't think that guy leaves his drawing table, and I admire the hell out of it, but I don't know if like that's my approach to making art, you know?
Yeah.
And like, so I agree, but I also would say like, if you're somebody who's like out there like listening to this and going like, cool, I'm gonna go to my 20th drink and draw this week and not do anything on my own or build anything, like, no, stay at home, like screw the drink and draw, get your own work done. Right? So
you got to bring something to the drink and draw and experience it and critique it. Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and that's another reason that that collaboration is good too, like having friends that'll keep you accountable, because it's like, you know, you can come to the table now with that 50-page book, right? Yeah. And that's going to like inspire guys. I mean, that's already, I think, inspiring like Scott and I to get a book out, you know what I mean? And like, that's going to inspire the next guy who's like almost done with their book, because they're like, I could get a book. And then you're going to see their book, and then you're going to be like, crap, I got to get my next 50-page book. It's good to have that too, where it's like, you don't want to be in like a vacuum where you can just like be like, I personally think like, were you not interacting with other artists, it might have taken you longer to do your second book, you know, because it's very quick. But I'm guessing, am I wrong? Is that like part of the motivation is like, I can bring another book.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I in my art department that I work in, so we're actually for a high school art department, we're actually gigantic. We have 5 teachers, and we're split across by disciplines. So I teach all the drawing and painting, and we have a photography, ceramics, and graphic design department, and kind of like our intro level courses. And like I teach all the drawing and painting. When my really close friends now with the graphic design teacher, his name is Chris Rao, and he actually makes comics too. Nice. And so I literally have a guy that I just run across the hallway to, like in the middle of class, and I'm like, look at this panel I just drew. Like, and he's like, oh, look at this panel I just drew. Or like, and then that opposite thing is true. And this happens with me and Scott a lot, where if I'm in a funk, he's usually killing it. And if he's killing it, I'm usually in a funk. And then you see them like, you meet and you're like, I'm sorry, dude, I didn't bring something. And then Scott's like, I brought everything. And you're like, oh my God, next thing I'll have everything. Like, and that just happened with me and my friend at work. And he's been in the weird, like, I've been stuck at home and not interacting funk. And he was like, dude, I don't know how you got back into your comic. And I was talking to him like, I think Scott helped out because I have other people too that I get in with that thing. and I talked to him about it. And then like the next day, like I go in the morning and he was like in before me at his desk, like cranking panels out, and was like, I'm back in it. Let's go. Let's do it.
It seems like you could almost expand. I don't know if you want to, but you could almost expand. I'd rather be drawing because you've got other people that might, benefit from being in that sort of collective.
Yeah, me and Scott have definitely talked about the idea, and we like the idea of expanding it. And I don't know if it's like expanding the support system or expanding actually I'd rather be drawing, or like creating some sort of object. I love what you guys do with like 100 Days of Making Comics and things like that, where it's almost like you sponsor a challenge that you're just like, it's fun to join along with. I
think that might work too, because I might get a little out of hand and maybe you get too many like members, but if you under that banner, that could work. There's so many different ways you can go with it, but I'm just reminded, and anyone out there, and again, we're in the pandemic right now, but when we can get around to meeting people, I'm just surprised. I live in or at least close to a major sort of metropolitan city, but I'm still always amazed at how many people I know that are local, like just right now in the chat. And it's just weird how you meet people and you don't even know they're local until you talk to them. But we got Gary Hodges, he's in Arizona. We got Victor Rodriguez, he's in Arizona, and just so many other people that I'll meet online. I'm like, wow, wait, you live around here or whatever. So that's kind of, but just find out. You can do it online or whatever, but when we get back to normal, I think you might be surprised who's kind of in your area, or at least willing to, or close to you, and might be willing to travel a little bit. Because I live sort of on the outskirts, but I'm not opposed to like driving 20 miles or whatever it is to meet up with artists and stuff like that. So
yeah, like the NCS thing, it's like that's quite a bit from my house, but it's worth it for those meetings, So if you can do, if they were weekly, it'd be really hard to pull off. But since they're usually monthly, which right now during COVID they're non-existent, but it's like, if they're monthly, like that's a lot more sustainable for like a big meetup like that where you have to drive quite a few miles. I'd also just I really would reiterate too. It's like, Scott and the Artcasters is like a constant inspiration, because it's like we have people on that, are constantly producing stuff. And so like, if I'm in a funk, like I feel pretty crappy if I haven't touched my comic when I'm, when I'm surrounded by like Scott and Corey and constant guests that are just like having constant output. It's like I always feel pressure to like bring something to the table. And it's not like a bad pressure, because it's it's not like we all give each other a hard time or anything. It's just like that good pressure. So yeah, like I think if you're picking your community, like what you were talking about with your community, it's like I think it's important to also pick somebody who's going to hold you to it.
Yeah, that accountability. I joke with my students too, that because I have students a lot when they graduate, and they're like I'm like, are you gonna do art school? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do to pursue this? And I always talk to my students too, like art school is not the only way, but like don't leave this place and create in a vacuum.
Right.
Like, the reason art school is so good is because it's a literal community. Like it is a place that will drive you even further into your art. And you could go online and you can learn this and you can learn that, but you don't get people. Like you don't get the community, you don't get the other part that people don't realize is just like so important for art. And it's the joke we always make is it's positive peer pressure. It's not like it's the peer pressure of like you better work. It's everyone's working. Like, what am I making? I got to work too. Like it's like I want to be in this place and do that thing. And it happens like that is actually like literally like how I structure my classroom is like, do you see everybody else in here like matching the vibe and like you're totally harshing it right now? Like when I have kids like are acting up or just acting a fool, like I'll literally have like moments where you just like pull them up to my desk and I'm like, do you see this? Like, are you existing in this space right now? Like you are like you got to be in the vibe. Like imagine how much more fun you'd be having right now in my space if you were with this and not like going against this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and again, it's I was just starting to get in that mode because I'm very comfortable, here in, as far as, creativity and everything, COVID hasn't affected me that much because I'm an introvert. I'm perfectly fine just sitting here doing my own thing. But I kind of made it a point to try to get out of that, a couple years ago, and I started doing more networking events and things, and I really started to get into it, and I started liking it quite a bit, and then everything, everything happened right now. So, because I think we were trying to Corey and I went to this networking thing called Creative South, and we were trying to get Josh to go this past year, which of course it was canceled. But yeah, I mean, it is really, there's really nothing quite like it, and it can be a little. You can be a little nervous first if you're not used to that, if you are more of an introvert. But when you kind of step out of your comfort zone and you start meeting people and talking to people, I mean, it's just, man, I just miss it so much. Have the ability to go out and do that kind of stuff. So we'll see. I can't wait till we can get back to that. Even though I am also very comfortable just kind of working, working on my own in my own little, underground lair and everything. So.
Yeah, and I like, for me, I think one of the reasons I've been pretty cozy during the COVID thing, like with productivity and stuff, is I've already, and I think this goes for you too, Scott, where it's like, I like Corey's comment, no one lives here. It hasn't changed much. To me, I view it as like a really positive thing that, like, Scott, you, me, and Corey have built these habits of constant kind of output. And so building those habits becomes almost like working out or any other positive thing, where as long as you stay consistent with it, it's hard to fall into a hole. And luckily, there were all these wheels turning on projects that I had already started that, when COVID hit, it just was almost like the perfect time, as terrible as that is, because it's a horrible thing that happened. But for my own self, it worked out as perfect timing to allow me the time to get a project moving further than I could have without it. So, but the only reason I was able to do that and hit the ground running was I'm knee deep in a project, And I think that's part of it too, is if you're constantly Scott, part of why you're so comfortable with it is you're constantly output, you're constantly working on stuff. And so, but I do think if you're on that other end, because I tend to kind of sway that end too, where I could spend hours just, sitting alone and working. I have to remind myself to be around other people because of you just start getting weird if you when I worked on my own for 15 years, I did freelance, just total freelance from home, and it does a number on your brain if you don't get out of the house. And I don't know. I would have the first year I would have weeks where I didn't shave for keep in mind I didn't have a beard at the time, but I wouldn't shave for 3 weeks and be meh. I'd be I'm not changing out of pajamas ever. Yeah. And then I had to build routines, because it's you can kind of fall out of that.
I have to because I usually go jogging. I have to get up and take a shower. I can't just work in my pajamas or whatever like that. So
yeah, I think that's probably why it hit me opposite. I'm a creature of habit who has always had something to force me into routine, and then it was bam, no more virtual learning. Students are at home. You're at home. By the way, you're not just doing summer this year. You're doing summer for 6 months. It was
yeah.
What do I do with myself? And I'm the guy too who I love a convention because I'm about as far as extrovert as it gets. So I could sell zero at a convention and have a blast. Cool. People, creators, let's go, let's do this thing. And then it happened the literal week, it was Monday that it happened, and that Saturday was supposed to be my favorite convention of the year. And it shut me down right in front of it, and I was stoked, and I was gonna connect with some friends I don't only get to see once a year, and then it just.
I assume you already prepaid for it too, right?
Yeah. It was just so much stuff that it was just well, I guess I could draw today, but yeah, it's kind of what you said. I'll just not shave instead, and and then I fell in that hole, and then it took me a couple months to be oh, what am I doing? I got this awesome book. I got other creatives, I got Scott, Scott Green, and all the other people, and I was I'm blowing it. I got to get my brain back in the space. I got to tell people I'm doing a thing. I got to keep, and that's actually why I love social media stuff. Is I'm a guy who I will post, this is coming out on this date, and then I'm boom, okay, I've told the 5 people who follow me and care about what I say that I'm doing this. I better do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always good when you put something out there. I mean, if people will hold you accountable, hopefully. So, but
even if you can create the perception, like, so like, for me, like I'll post, like when I'm doing thumbnails, I try to post like a thumbnail a day. I don't always hit it, but it's like, if I'm doing that and I know I have that self expectation and then I'm putting it out publicly, it just kind of forces me to keep doing it or try to keep doing it. It gives me like a goal to hit. And I don't know how many people care. I've been working on like side projects, like building a little pitch thing, and so I haven't posted in, like a month or so, and it's like I haven't heard any complaints. But
right, yeah, that's
I just have inventing
illusion we create that, like, the minute we missed a post, everyone's like, oh, okay, well, he said he was going to post on Monday and he didn't.
Yeah, but I like that perception. Like, I'll psych myself out with that perception because it just helps, so yeah.
So I don't know, David, if you want to touch a little bit on, teaching. We were talking about a little bit before the show about some of the challenges and stuff that you have, teaching remote. Now, are you back to in classes or not? I know my
full virtual through the end of the semester at least.
Okay, yeah. I know my daughter is back in actual physical. I don't know if that might end, depending on, because obviously the rates are rising and everything. So, but so what are some of the challenges that you kind of face teaching virtually?
So the way our district is doing it is it's full virtual, but there is a bell schedule. So I do live classes on like a rotating block schedule. So it's classes from 8 to noon every day, and they're for 45 minutes on the hour, and then there's 15 minutes between for kids to like make sure they can actually get connected to the next class and all that, and everything in between, like technology and slow internet and all that kind of stuff. That's super helpful because there is accountability there. Like if a kid doesn't come to like one of my Zoom sessions, they've technically skipped class, and like it's like you have to report it like it's a truancy, and there's a whole mess with that. I mean, we always joke. So the way it works is it goes till noon, and then from like 1, you have your lunch and kind of getting prepared, and then from 1 to 3, I'm just in an open like session that the kids have the link that they can just come in to ask questions and do whatever. And I think they originally intended it to be a little bit more of like homework. Maybe 5 kids are hanging out with you at the end of the day, like you're tutoring them, but they're all super embarrassed. And so it's usually like they just pop in for 5 seconds to be like, I had a quick question. Or is that, and then like another kid jumps in, like they just leave without even like finishing their sentence. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of that too, of like being an art teacher. So it's like, there's all these times where I wish I could just like, dude, if I could just sit right across from you with a piece of paper and be like,
this gotta be,
you're just missing this small angle. You're just like that kind of thing. That's been a pretty big challenge. There's a program.
If I can stop you for a second. So if it's digital, if are they working digitally, or, because I know I've seen a lot of people like when they're like, they'll do like the paint overs or in Photoshop, and they'll do another layer where they can actually do what you're talking about, where they can kind of show them and things. Do you do any of that kind of thing?
So actually, this just kind of got thrown on me, and this is a learn as I go experience as well. But so there's this program, it's like a website, it's called Padlet. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it or anything, but it's like a collaboration board. Like you basically end up making like a Pinterest board, but with whoever you invite to it, they like post a picture, and then it makes a giant wall of it. So I use those now between class periods. Like if I'm like, draw 5 forms between now and the next time I see you, I want to make sure you've at least drawn 2. We'll start class and they'll take a photo of their forms, and it makes a wall with their names on it of all their forms. And then I actually use the Zoom drawing tools. So Zoom has like annotation drawing tools, and I'll use those, and I'll draw over, because I'll do a screen share, and then I'll be like, okay, see why this box isn't working. Like, look how like slanted, and like we're going for parallels here, and I'll draw the like with the white lines on top of it. And that's my easiest way to critique. It's not perfect, because if they didn't take like a great straight angle photo, and it is weird, and the perspective is even more warped, it's like it's hard to critique it properly. But that is sort of what I try to do to fix it, and they seem to appreciate it. I do it a lot with my upper level, like studio, like level 2 kids and stuff. Like they really enjoy that, because we're doing faces right now, and I'll literally draw like the circle with a line and the 3/4 proportions, and be like, do you see why your eyes are in the complete wrong place? And they'll be like, oh my gosh. And it's actually almost more helpful sometimes to literally be able to just mark all over their paper and it not actually be a drawing, and like things like that I'm happy about, because I was like, this might actually transfer over into like real school. I might actually start making you guys turn things in digitally that I can just mess it up, draw all over, and give it back to you, and you can see what you can do to fix it.
Yeah, that is really cool.
So how do you, with something like art, when you're, I mean, if it's anything like when I took art classes, you usually you're introduced to a lot of different mediums and things like that, and usually the class provides a lot of those. So if you're not actually physically there, do the kids have to go out and buy all that stuff, or or do you have you changed the type of mediums you use to make it more accessible, more inexpensive? Because I know, like, when I was in high school art, I mean, even then, even though they provided the materials, but like a lot of it, a lot of the paints and stuff are expensive. So I remember having to, my art teacher had like house paints because you could get a big bucket, and those aren't the best paints to paint like, paintings with, but that's what we had, so.
Yeah, we had like tempera.
Yeah, so luckily I have an extremely supportive principal. He used to be a drama like speech debate teacher.
Nice.
So he kind of has actually a really, like, he understands the value of like electives and the arts and stuff like that. And so he is very well known for knowing what to do with his budget. So we don't usually get told no when we need things. And so what we did was we proposed to him making kind of a combination of what you just said, like generic packs that are like not normally what I would give my kids, but some sort of version so that like they at least have some markers and a set of drawing pencils, or like maybe a blender that goes home with them, or something like that. And so we did that. He was like, yeah, dude, figure out what you need. Like we on Amazon and like basically like sold Amazon out, buying like 500 packs of whatever random things that we needed. And then for 3 days straight, we had to pack them all up in Ziploc baggies and envelopes and label them by the class that the student would be enrolled in and what supply packet they should get. It was probably my least favorite thing I've ever done as a teacher.
Yeah. That's cool though. Yeah.
That's a crazy amount. Like, I think, cause I have a couple buddies who teach high school art, and, most of them have weathered well. And like, this is weird, but like one of the things I've noticed about most people is like, if somebody had described like, this year, like, like a year from now, there's going to be a mass pandemic, like most businesses are going to shut down, like schools are going to shut down, everybody's going to have to start functioning remotely. These things are going to be happening. I wouldn't have actually predicted that people would be as resilient, including myself, as they have been, like amid all the craziness. And what's impressed me with all high school teachers, and honestly, Lee, like even my son's teacher, like elementary school teachers, like I watched his teacher like the first week train a bunch of 7-year-olds remotely on how to like press a mute button so that there's no feedback, with the stream. Yeah. And I was just like astounded with like the patience and kind of like, that must be frustrating when you're a teacher who's like, especially a seasoned teacher, can shut a room down in like 2 seconds, like to quiet, because you just have that power. And not like power, like bad teacher power, but like the power to just kind of stand and you get
you lose the, like what you said is super real. Like when you're a seasoned teacher, you can just like, you come into a room and there's just a little bit of like, oh, he's competent, he knows what he's doing. Like, let's listen to him. What he has to say might be kind of cool. Yeah. And then like a face on the other side of the camera being like, I really hope I'm still as interesting as I usually am here. Like, and you're waving and half of them already waving back, or they're just like they're, oh man, the high school kid, it's like they're in bed still, Yeah. And like, can you sit up for me, or whatever. And they're like, okay, that's cool, whatever. And then they sit up, and then it's not any better, because then they're like, then they have their pillow, and then they're laying like right in front of the camera. And things like that are a little, like, if I were to say there's any parts that are like a little disheartening about it, it's like, I just hope that they're still loving it the same.
Yeah.
Like, when there's an energy when you're in like the art room, and it's like, this is like a lot, because for a lot of the kids, and it's the reason I became an art teacher, like art class is an escape from what other subjects usually are and feel like at school. And it's a chance to be like, okay, now I'm just like giving you this creative challenge and this way to think abstractly, and to kind of take a break from the fact that there isn't just one answer to this. I'm not just like putting a math problem on the board and yelling at you when you get it wrong. Like, I'm telling you that it's not A, it's not B, it's not C. It's whatever you pick, as long as doing this cool concept, this idea I'm giving you. And yeah, so that part of it gets to me sometimes where I'm thinking, I'm just like, I really hope art is still like that thing for these students, because it usually is in the real semesters.
Yeah, that's really well put. But like, I'm impressed by like what you've just described, where it's like, I mean, to just pivot from like, you know, prepping for like going in and like to packing envelopes, you know, with art supplies and just kind of switching gears. I think it's just kind of amazing how adaptable I think like people have been during this whole thing.
Yeah,
it's been pretty amazing to see. But I agree. I also just like, I can't imagine not, because one of my favorite things, like the brief time that I taught was like when you'd see a student like working on something and you'd see them kind of misdirecting in an area, and you could kind of give them a hand, like, or just come by and ask them a good question that kind of reroutes them to like, you know, like where they can come up with the solution. And like the ability, like losing that ability to kind of walk around and kind of see a little bit behind the shoulder of the person working, it does feel like that's a loss. But then there is the gain of like, dude, you can draw on people's work to give them pointers and stuff.
Yeah. And it is like so in our intro level courses, we do a project that we like last year we actually started doing this process where it's like the first time that the kids in the intro level like work on a big project where they're like multiple days of class. I just want you to keep getting your same project out and putting in work. And kids have like a really hard time with this concept when you're like not an artist, to think like a good work of art takes like 3+ hours. Like you don't just like sit for 50 minutes and make a masterpiece. You got to put it away and mull over and pull it back out and put it away. And so we started making them take photos of their days. Like, okay, day one's over, take a photo. Where were you on day one? Okay, day two's over, take a photo. And we would have them trap it like almost like a slideshow and have them turn it in like that. So that I could literally see like a kid's like working through their creative process. And so it was great because I was like, oh man, I kind of already did this with students. Now I just have to find a way to trap this. So like they're literally just every day sharing with me like what's happening, like what's that creative process thing. And with that in mind too, I do feel like it helps them like understand that too, because we do every other day block scheduling now too. And so like it's a whole day in the last time I see them. So it's like if you didn't touch your project at all, you're completely disconnected from it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's, man, wow. That's pretty amazing though.
Yeah, I have kids come back like, wait, well, we're still doing that thing? Like, I'm like, yeah, dude, it was just Monday. Like, come on, like, like completely dropped out of their brain because they skipped Wednesday and they were in class last on Monday, and then it's Friday, and I'm like, yes, we're still working on that project. Everyone's made beautiful progress. How are you doing?
So does it get better? I mean, is it after you kind of, because you got to iron things out, and it's, I mean, obviously it's confusing, but or is it still kind of a struggle for everyone to get on the same page, doing everything, you know?
I'd say that the students who are willing have nailed it. Like the setup, the process, the new way of doing things is working actually really well for the students putting in the work. It's this other chunk of students because I admit it, like I wasn't a great high school student. Like I didn't really grab education as an important thing in my life until I hit college and realized like, oh shoot, like it's important to educate myself. Like I hit the rebellious teenager stage pretty hard. So I'd totally be skipping school if it was just like, hey, jump on Zoom this morning if you can, buddy. Like
I can't even it's scary for me to even think how I would have reacted to this in high school, you know. I just
I don't know. I was the horrible student. Not that I would have been skipping classes. I just the schools just they just didn't teach the way that I learned. So it took me a while to figure out what the best way for me to learn, and that's by mostly visual learning and watching videos and learn by repetition and things like that. So, but I mean, everyone learns in a different way, and this is like. To do what you guys have to do now, and it's just like, and basically have to adapt so quickly to these changing times and everything. I'm also impressed by the way they figure, mostly they're kind of figuring out how to do this and everything. It's actually pretty impressive. So
you also
I think it's kind of the same as just like with the art thing though too. Like I'd say most, I guess I can't say all, but most teachers are very passionate about that thing. Like I have a huge passion to share this thing that I do and to teach my students. And so when the problem hits, I'm like, you are going to learn. Like I have a cool thing to teach you and you're going to learn it. And I think that's part of that. Like, so like I'm gonna figure it out and we're gonna figure it out. And they're relating it same to like when I do my comics and when I do the things, it's like, I'm going to figure this out. It might take me a year. I might have to do this a bunch. I might have to practice this thing or practice that thing. But like, I think it's that same thing of just like when you have a passion, like you don't let things like a pandemic stop you. You're like,
right.
Like, okay, I have to do this over Zoom. Let's do this. Let's go. Hey, look, you can draw on Zoom. All right, cool. Let's see what we can do with this. Like,
yeah. And with art being, in high school with it being an elective and in college with it being the easy, credit or whatever, a lot of people see, a lot of times you get people in there that they don't really care. They just, this is easy class, but then you've got the people in art was obviously the one subject that I always loved. And I always, if it was offered, as an elective, I would take it. So.
Oh yeah. 100%. That was me too.
Yeah. So I'm sure the variety of students kind of varies too. Some people are probably like totally into it. And some people are just kind of,
yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't sign up for this class.
Yeah.
So dude, one of my favorite, I don't know if anybody can say this when they are teaching, but when I was about to start teaching a college class, I asked like one of my favorite professors, like if they had any tips, because it's like, you're going into the lion's den and it's a little bit like, well, what shouldn't I do? And like, every teacher I knew was like, never pretend you know something you don't know, which is brilliant and good advice. Where it's like, just don't double down on knowledge you don't have. Just be like, I don't know. Anybody know? Like, like, do you have any ideas on that? Like, or let me get back to you on that. Like, I haven't really thought about that. But the other piece of advice was to find the like 4 students that are really engaged and teach for them. And try to bring everybody else along.
Yeah,
like
that positive thing. Yeah. Like if the other kids in class have like 3 kids sitting at their table that are like nodding their head and loving it, like you're not going to sit there and be like a wet sandwich when everyone else is like, yeah, let's go. Like,
yeah. So I thought that was great advice because it's like I did have like classes where you'd have like the whole class was just like engaged, awesome, amazing, like they all wanted it, and then I'd have other classes where it was literally like, okay, these 2 students are what are keeping me sane here because they want to learn and the other people just want to waste their money, like, so I think, it amazes me, man. Teaching is a really cool thing. And I miss it sometimes. There's times where I do miss it.
Yeah. It's definitely part of what drives that input thing that I was talking to you guys about too. Like I get this interaction on a daily basis with other like people who are passionate about art at a level that like I'm able to like share with and like my knowledge. And actually sometimes this really cool thing happens where you get this kid who's like better than I would probably ever be at this.
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know why. And then it's really cool, like being able to like be like, I don't know why you already understand this concept of like high contrast and this and that without even like I had to learn this concept and then teach myself this and you just do it. And then you tell them it and then they get even better at it because then they're like, the reason why your art's so cool is because you do this to it. And they're like, oh, seriously? And then they do it even more and it gets even better. And you're like, oh, okay. I don't know why I'm your teacher anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, some of these people coming up, man, I'm just blown away by how some of these young people, the stuff that they can do. It's like, but they also have had, resources that at a young age that we never, at least I never had. I'm a little bit older than you, David, but I mean, we didn't have, it was, you couldn't just Google something and find the answer to it. I mean, it was, so it's pretty impressive, but it definitely shows in a lot of the work and everything. So
yeah, I was right on the edge of the like generation that like I could take a Photoshop class when I was in high school, but it was like, not a Photoshop class, and like the internet was there, and like so like I graduated in 2008, so it was like right at the edge of like everyone has a cell phone, but not really a cell phone yet, like
right, yeah.
King Grow in the chat said that school's really good at making kids hate learning, and I mean I think that's a really good like to just hark on that because as a teacher I see that comment and it's real and it's kind of part of my daily struggle of like teachers who don't, it's almost like they have more of a passion of like what Josh was talking about, of being the boss in the room.
Yeah.
About being the passionate like teacher in person to like create the atmosphere and stuff. And yeah, that's a constant struggle. And I feel that, I felt that actually as a student, I think too. And I think it's why I have such a passion to be like one less of those in the classroom.
Yeah. It's funny how people who may have not been great students, how many of them, go into teaching. And I don't know if that's just because they realize that, yeah, I can probably do this better. I see where at least and I mean, I'm not a teacher in the sense that, I teach at a school or anything, but I've done courses and things like that. And I just know how much I struggle with stuff. And so I hopefully I found a way that, at least I can teach certain people that may not learn by the traditional methods, because those didn't really necessarily work for me. But yeah, it's a good point.
I had like a literal moment that I can pull out from like when I graduated high school being like, it was like that thing of like understanding I should probably go to college, but not really knowing what I want to do with it. Mm-hmm. I was just still taking art as an elective. And I had this teacher who, like, if you could describe like the most, like, we even made the joke about like being a traditionalist artist, earlier, like the most traditional artist you've ever met, like would get mad at me because like it was still Lifetime and I wanted to like draw an eyeball on it or something, or like do something weird with it. He was like, that's not art. Like, it's only the way you see it in real life. If it is not the way it's represented, like you are not creating art. And it almost made me quit art. Actually, it was such a like downer on like my creative process. He like had to have surgery and it was out for a week. And one of the other professors jumped in. And it was like this life-changing moment of seeing a different person from a different angle, being like, art is whatever you do, dude. Like I don't know, like, because it was like I was doing the thing I would normally do because I also was still in that zone of like loving to piss off authority. And so we were drawing barns, and I made it into like a monster with teeth, like eating the cow. Mm-hmm. And the sub-in professor like took it and like put it on the board, and I was like, here we go again. Like, and he was like, I don't know why no one else in this class is doing this. Like, this is what, like, why are you all just drawing barns? Like, and it was like the weirdest moment of like, whoa, like, what is this thing? Like, it was just, and it was like, yeah, it just hit me. It was like a weird moment when I got home and I was like, I think I need to be a teacher, because I need to inspire like the students who feel like they were just told for years that they were doing it wrong. And they really like almost kill, like, it was this close to like killing my passion for art.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, dude. I meet so many people who like have like stories of like that time in their life, like literally having a teacher who's like crushed their inspiration. And to me, like, I think the best teachers that I've met like tend to have an awareness of that responsibility, where it's like you could crush somebody and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But like, I always felt like the better approach is like foster that creativity. So I'd have these kids who like one of the biggest problems in college is like a lot of people like draw in a manga style, and it's not a good manga style. It's just, it's like a bad template that they've just programmed into themselves and think that that's manga. And so like what I would do, instead of being like, you can't do manga, which most college professors just hate manga and are just like, don't bring it. I'd just show them a bunch of good manga. And then I'd be like, are you doing it to this level? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, let's get you there. Like, or if I had a kid who did like the crappy graffiti font and was like, yeah, this is representing where I come from. It's like, no, it's not, dude. That's the ugliest font in the world. Let me show you, like Mike Giant and like these other dudes who like know graffiti and like can do it well. And let's get you there. Let's get you to like express yourself through it, because this other thing is just like a generic thing. That's the way to get people engaged and challenge them, like, as opposed to like just being like, you can't do that here, or like, or programming a bunch of students to like draw a duck and render it so well that you could put it in a gallery where like you can't tell the difference of like who did it, but you're like, yeah, that's a duck.
Yeah. Actually, I just had a student go through our department who's probably like one of the best oil painters I've ever seen. Like, as a freshman going all the way through, she would just oil paint things, and it was like she had this like very Renaissance, like high contrast like style that would just like blow my mind. But like, she couldn't like make up her own ideas. Like, she could grab a reference and she could like blow my mind with it, but I'd be like, well, like, what are you doing here? Like, let's talk about this. And like why did you pick this person? She's like, it look cool. It was like, it was like a 4-year struggle for her to be like, have you ever tried to take 5 references together and just pull like one piece from each reference and like really make something that you care about and isn't just like a photo from the internet? And then, like, and I remember the first time I had the conversation with her, she was like, I'm allowed to do that? Like, I can do that? And it was like, yes, like that's what you're supposed to, like what you're doing in my mind is almost like studies. You're just giving me like studies of paint and like, you're not like, let's make something like really break the boundary of that thing. And I remember that she made this thing for our senior show that was just like this giant canvas, like size of the wall, like weird face thing. It was like, and it was like, she was like, I hate this, but I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. She's like, this isn't my style. This isn't what I want to do. But like, I made this and I realized like what you've been trying to say to me this whole time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground. Is there anything before we start to wrap up that you wanted to talk about? Obviously, we'll give you another chance to pitch the Kickstarter and everything, but is there anything that we kind of skipped over that you wanted to get out before we start wrapping things up, David?
I mean, nothing that I wanted to, but now I feel like we had a really good talk and I went in a place I wasn't even expecting to. And it just brings me back to this. Like, it's another reason why I became a teacher. Like, everyone can draw. Like, drawing is learnable. And if you're someone who has a passion, for it, like, you just actually have to sit down and do it. It's the thing that Josh was talking about earlier. Like, kids all the time too tell me like, oh, I sketch. Like, I love to draw. And I'm like, cool, let me see your sketchbook. And they're like, I don't have anything. I haven't drawn like a year. And you're like, well, then you don't draw. Like, like if you draw, then draw, man. Show me what you got. Like, make 10 stick figures, and the 11th stick figure will be better than the first one. Like, that's exactly all you got to do. Like,
totally,
just sit down and make the paper. Like, there's a thing that a professor like once told me, and it was like, the only difference, and I don't remember if he was like quoting me or quoting a thing, but it's like the only difference between like you and the person who's like up there is that stack of paper. Like, your stack of paper is this thick and my stack of paper is like
exactly this. Yeah.
It's it.
I mean, like you said, there's some people. I mean, there is a case for talent, because you're talking about these young kids that are like the best oil painter you've seen, or the people that are like, they're just way better than you. So there is that, but you can definitely learn it. I mean, I don't know that I have any sort of talent. I think it was just, I mean, I've drawn ever since I was a kid, and I continue to draw, and that's the reason why I can do what I can do. And there's still people that blow me away or blow me out of the water all the time. But if I maybe, and it could be a different medium that maybe I've never tried or whatever the case is. I mean, I know the stuff that I stick to, I think I'm pretty good at, and I'm, it's like this old saying, first you get good, then you get fast, then you get good and fast, that type of thing. And you definitely see that, but it's all practice, so it's like anything. So,
and I've seen the talent go to waste too. Like, I've seen, dudes coming to my department as freshmen that I was like, dude, you're going to be the bomb, who like don't listen to anything I have to say.
Yeah.
They think they're already there, and then you watch this kid who was like you were like, are you sure you want to love art? And then you get him as a senior, like, dude, you're like, I wish like you would have kept that, because high school kids throw away their projects all the time. I'm like, why do you do that? And you're like, I wish you would have kept that project that you made the first time you were in class with me, because if you could see how much better you've gotten, like, it's insane. Like, it's really cool watching kids grow up from freshman to senior and really push themselves.
Dude, that's one of my main reasons my favorite students when I did teach were B students. I never tell like the hot shots who came in like that, but I always like kind of rooted for the B students, because they were who I always saw the most progress with. Because when they got an A, they really worked and overcame something to get it. And what's weird is by like mid-semester, they'd be drawing better and creating better work than like the hot shots who came in and were just like, I got it all, and they're pretty good, but it's like there's something about like that hunger, and that's the one frustration I think about making comics, about making art, about teaching art, about anything related to art, is like the one thing I don't know if you can teach, which is like that hunger. Like, you can do things to try to kind of stoke it and like to light whatever that fire is, but it's like it's this hard thing where it's like there's no way to force it. You can't force somebody to want it. And so it's kind of it's very similar to like, in scenarios where like David, like you're one of the people who made a comic, but for every like person like you who's made one. There's a million out there like, yeah, I make comics, and you're like, what comics did you make? And they've got nothing. And some of them are like early us's, like where it's like they're just people who like have the fear and need like the fire lit a little bit and will get it done. And then some of them probably will never do it. And it's like that weird division of like, I wish there was a way to like fully be able to override that with people. But that's why I was like B students, because I'm like, they just have that want. They have to work hard to get the B or the A.
In education right now, actually, it's the curiosity. Like, you have to be curious enough to push the buttons and engage yourself and make the line, even if it's wrong, because you're curious what happens if you make the line, and what happens if I make the line this way, and what happens if I make the line that way. And yeah, you can't teach a student to be curious of like the process. They have to have it, and that's a real thing, because it happens too with like kids who like students who can't like troubleshoot for themselves. They're like, my Zoom on mute, and you're like, well, did you push any buttons yet, or did you just freak out because you're zoomed in?
Oh man, this is great, man. I know it's getting late where you are, but we'll definitely have to have you back. Maybe we can try it again and try to get Scott on too. And
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I really love where this went with the teaching, and I mean, obviously, we could maybe get you on with Corey, who's also a teacher, and I mean, the chat's been great, and like I'm the kind of person, because like I said, I've never like taught at like a high school or college level or any kind of structured thing, just stuff on YouTube. But there's been a couple really, really nice comments about that people like the way that I teach on YouTube in the chat. So I just want to thank you. It's that's kind of the stuff that keeps me wanting to do this and stuff, because I get a little disheartened when you've been at it this long and you just don't see the stuff growing like you think it should be. But it makes it all worth it that people are actually learning from what you're doing and everything, and I appreciate you. So that's awesome. So okay, let's kind of wrap things up then. Josh, where can everyone find you? Let me get back to
All right. Well, you can occasionally find me lurking on Scott's channel on Artcasters, but if not there, you can find me at joshvakemble.com, and you can also find a sample of my comic about faith and mental illness that I handwrite, hand letter, and hand ink, and we'll be handing to you all in print someday. And actually, that day is the 17th or the 14th, my goodness, of December. And I'll be able to give like pre-order information and stuff like that once I get that from Marcosia. So
I'm waiting. I can't wait. It's gonna be a nice Christmas present to myself. So all right. So David, you got a Kickstarter going on right now. There is a direct link in the description of this video you can click on, or you can just go to Kickstarter and you can type in Analog Missions Oberon and you'll be able to find it there too. But you want to give it a quick pitch for your Kickstarter?
Yeah. So yeah, like they were saying, Mr. David Fleming, this was an awesome chat. This was like, seriously, I could have. It's super late. And I don't even care. I could have done this all night. But the Kickstarter is a 50-page, printed at the standard size of a manga. It's a sci-fi that's inspired by just sort of the weird and strange 90s era of sci-fi comics and anime that just sort of like made me the nerd that I am today. But yeah, you look up Analog Missions. It is book 2. But every backer gets a free PDF of book 1, so you can jump in now and not miss out on anything. And there is a tier. I think there's 25 of them left to get a print of the first edition of my first printing of the first book as well.
Awesome. Sweet. Is there any other place online that you want to direct people to, or is that?
Yeah. Okay. If you do want to just follow me as a creator and see what I do, Art of Mr. Fleming on pretty much everything. Instagram is my number one. That's where I'm most active. But if you Art of Mr. Fleming is how you find it. And then I would love to send you to I'd rather be drawing.com.
I went there and I was going to put that up, but I noticed there's no like links or anything up there.
Yeah. So our website crashed hard last month.
Okay.
We had some weird stuff with the FTP and a bunch of words I could say that just weren't compatible. And the only way I could find to fix it was to just delete the whole website.
Were you on WordPress by any chance? Or
yeah, I was.
did it get hacked then, or?
Well, it was like there was an update that was supposed to happen.
Okay, that's
and
why I
I
left WordPress.
updated WordPress before I updated my host. And then the two things just could not communicate together anymore. And in the midst of Kickstarter, redesigning a whole website is not easy. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
So
because
there's a landing page there, but it's not really anything right now.
Yeah, I noticed there wasn't even a link to the Kickstarter.
Yeah. That's actually what I'm trying to make happen. Is just a real quick. You probably saw like it was just a picture of my like thing. I'm trying to just blast a link underneath that real quick, but I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you still got some time, but don't sleep on it. Get definitely going back David's Kickstarter. I've already backed it. I've got the first one, so it's a really nice book. So definitely check it out. Do you go through CreateSpace or Amazon KDP, or how do you?
So I haven't like you said, it was just last March when I did it. The only real like getting it out into people's like hands I've done is like the local, like I went around to all the local comic shops around me, and a lot of them are keeping it for me and stuff like that. But I haven't like gotten any other kind of like distribution beyond that.
What about the printing? How do you have it?
The printing of the book it's a website called Mixam.
Okay.
Mixam printing. It's a local, I think it's in California, and it just like does just bulk whatever they call that, offset printing or whatever.
I seem to remember having sort of that kind of matte finish to it.
Yes, that's actually the reason why I chose that printer.
That's what I do with all my books.
It was so there's a thing I meant to look at this. We're already getting right back into it. Yeah. there's a thing about when I read a black and white comic, I don't want gloss.
I agree. I'm not a big gloss fan. My comics are, but all my other books, my coloring books, I always go with that matte finish. And I know I print through, like my books I publish through Amazon, the coloring books and stuff that I do, and I always go for that matte finish. Plus it looks better on screen. If you do videos at all and you try to show something glossy on screen, it never really comes out too well. So
this is
but I ended up finding they don't have different like coats and stocks. They have like thickness of the stock, and like there was all with like customization that just like couldn't say no to, because it's that thing I talked about at the beginning. If I wanted to make a floppy, I know where to get a floppy printed. Like I wanted this to be like a thing. Like you said, the cover has like that soft cover finish, and like I really wanted this to be like every little detail of it I had in mind, like from the beginning of making the book.
Yeah, it looks really good. I like this. I like the manga size. I like the artwork. I love the presentation. I like the graphic design. It's a really nice book. So definitely go check that out on Kickstarter. As far as me, you can find me at circworks.com. You can also find me here on my YouTube channel. Check out, if you haven't already, check out Making Comics 101. If you're into making comics, I mean, if you aren't, I don't know probably why you're watching this show. Pretty much all we talked about. And that's probably what we talk about 90% of the time is comics. So, but if you want to learn how to make comics, it's free on my YouTube channel. You can consume as much of it as you want, but there's hours and hours, and you can either watch the thing straight through, or you can pick what particular part of making comics you want. It's all broken up into like inking would be one episode, and penciling another, or marketing, all that kind of stuff. So definitely check that out. And I'm kind of bringing it back in a live version, and I think next week I'll have a live Making Comics 101. And I usually answer questions. So if you guys do have any questions about making comics that you want me to answer, you can send me an email at scott@circworks.com, or just keep an eye on my YouTube channel. I'll be posting a little thing asking for comments and things like that. So that's what I got going on. As far as this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. It bounces back and forth between Josh's channel and my channel, usually on Thursday around 9 p.m. Pacific time, but it can change. And if you want to know when and where and all that stuff, the easiest way to do that is to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. We just usually about 30 minutes ahead of time or so, we'll send out an invite, or not an invite, but a link where you can find us, and we'll let you know who the host is, or who the guest is going to be, and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to do that, just click in the link at the description. And also, like I said, click on the link to David's comic on Kickstarter. And I just want to thank everyone in the chat. We had an awesome chat going on. So we'll see you guys next week on Josh's channel. Later.
Bye.